This is no ordinary game of Pokemon Violet, it's an enhanced difficulty hack called Pokemon Compass, where every major battle has at least 4 Pokemon hold items, increased level caps, and random double battles to ensure you never know what's coming. We'll even be taking on both DLCs, including the Loyal 3 Titans, all 4 phases of Ogerpon, and the Blueberry Elite 4. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I'm going to be using hardcore Nuzlocke rules, which means if any of my Pokemon faints, they're gone forever. And just because Legend ZA is right around the corner, I'm only going to be using Kalos Pokémon, with a twist. You'll see more later, but after rejecting Professor Clavell's Paldean starters, which isn't that far off from France, Kalos, do you think we'll be able to explore this top right corner in ZA? Anyways, I choose Chespin as my first starter Pokemon, who I name Hulk because he gets some unwarranted hate, and I want to show how Chestnut can be one of the Pokemon of all time. And since I'm mimicking New Game Plus, I'll also have the other 2 starters with Froakie and Fennekin, who I nicknamed Nightcrawler and Iron Man respectively. All 3 of these guys also have their hidden abilities to help me out on this run, since I'm definitely gonna need it. And you can already see that this game is a bit more difficult, being that Nemona terrestrializes her Quaxly on the very first fight. Still no problem for the Hulk, but Arven also steps up his game by doubling his team size, replacing his usual Squovit for a Knackley and Capsicid, both of which aren't a problem for our little Hulk, since Knackley goes down to a couple of Vine Whips and Capsicid goes down to a couple of rollouts after failing to do any meaningful damage. Fun fact, Chestnut has the highest defense of any starter Pokemon, while Delphox and Greninja are towards the bottom. Surely that won't matter at all in this run, right? Well, I found out in the first 2 attempts that it actually did matter, and it started mattering in this fight with Nemona, as she literally gatekeeps you from entering the school. She continues the theme of doubling the size of her team and adds in the fairly bulky Dunsparce for this early in the game, as well as a degenerate Rockruff, who both specialize in evasion techniques. So I first find reinforcements and pick up a Scatterbug named Storm, evolve them into Spupa, who learns Protect, which will be important in a moment, and they conveniently evolve into Vivillon right before the level cap. The battle starts as Chespin once again asserts his dominance, showing Quaxly that grass is still better than water, but Quaxly frustratingly gets off a growl to lower our attack before going down. We do get a couple of speed boosts from using Trailblaze, which means we're faster than Dunsparce as they come out, but that growl now means we do pitiful damage with Bite. I'm using Bite for the flinch chance here, and although we only get 1 flinch, we came prepared with a Cherry Berry to shake off the first paralysis caused by Glare to try and maximize our chances of flinching. But now that we're already at plan B, I switch to Vivillon into what I'm hoping is a Mud Slap, but of course it's the quad effective Rollout. Rollout does get stronger with every hit as long as it hits consecutively, but we can put an end to that by using the newly learned Protect. We then go for the now 97.5% accurate Sleep Powder thanks to Vivillon's Compound Eyes ability, which allows us to switch into Froakie for free as the slug stays asleep. I realize I'm in a bad position as I'm doing pathetic damage with Froakie, so I switch strategies and start trying to weaken their attack with Growl. If I time my switch right, Vivillon will be able to survive a few more rollouts, and with a little sleep luck can probably take this thing out. But this plan is immediately ruined as Dunsparce starts the rollout, and since it doubles in power every turn, he can one-shot every one of my team members. So I start mentally preparing for attempt 4. But then he misses? I take full advantage and send in Vivillon, who can take 1 more rollout with the help of our berry. And after protecting to ruin his rollout streak, Sleep Powder connects and we can get some good sleep luck as Dunsparce never moves again after they're taken out with a few gusts. That thing was a menace. The second degenerate comes out now, and I can't have him spamming double team, so I put him to sleep before switching to Froakie. We get lucky on the switch as the rock pup stays asleep, but on the next turn he uses Sand Attack to lower our accuracy, and then we get fully paralyzed. Great. After another Sand Attack, I'm sure it's going to be a game of missing, but Froakie pulls through and lands a water gun for the almost 1-hit KO. And then he clutches up by breaking through paralysis and the 2 accuracy drops by using Quick Attack to get the KO. Evasion strategies are the worst. And now arguably the biggest threat, Palmy, comes out, who terrestrializes into the electric type and uses Thunder Shock as I switch into Chespin. After a turn of being fully paralyzed and finally landing an attack on another turn, it comes down to risking the crit or potentially starting attempt 4. But instead of going for the KO, Palmy just uses Charge and then takes a Trailblaze straight to the face before Nemona finally agrees to let us through the school doors. If this fight is any indication of the rest of the run, we're going to need some reinforcements, and be sure to theory crap before every fight because we only get 20 potential encounters in this game for a total of 45 boss fights, 12 of those being double battles, and we don't even get a ground type. Ground types are an essential piece for any Nuzlocke run, and there's not even a viable electric type either. But we go to class, get our assignments, which strangely mix up the order of the gym leader for cohesiveness, but Katy is still the first gym leader. Katy also doubled the size of her team, almost, as well as increased her level cap from 15 to 28. So in preparation, we catch a Fletchling named Hawkeye and evolve them into Fletchinder and evolve all 3 Colossian starters into their middle stage form. What even is that? Even though Katy has evolved her usual gym Pokemon into their second stage, Bug is never a hard type to counter. Hawkeye is able to deal with our Spidops with a couple of flame charges, and Masquerain was a bit more challenging by lowering our attack with their Intimidate ability and laying down a layer of sticky webs to lower my team's speed upon entry, but the 110 base power acrobatics is still enough to KO them and her next Pokemon low kicks. Well, I mean, it's close to being enough, and we do get the KO on the next turn by pivoting with U-turn to bring in a fully healthy Iron Man against a race. And even though the sticky webs did lower our speed, we're still faster than this tiny bear, and we can get the Oko with a Burning Jealousy. Nice try, Katy, but you should have baked up a different strategy. Get it? Cause she's a baker? Bake up?
Oh, bro.
Anyways, Klawf is our next assignment. Besides getting the obvious level buff, he also got a terrifying moveset with excellent coverage. So the first thing we did is seek out an Esper, who we named Gambit, to evolve them into Meowstic because we're going to need their prankster abilities to set up priority screams to help protect the team. We also decide to find an Eevee and evolve them into the only eligible evolution and name them Aunt May. They get some crazy buffs in this game, which we'll go over in just a minute. We start the battle by sending out Meowstic, who can use their prankster ability to set up Reflect before taking a hit to soften the blow. We then use a priority Thunder Wave to cut their speed in half and to hopefully waste a couple of their turns. I decide I'm safe for one more turn and use Fake Tears to harshly lower Klawf's special defense as he does some huge damage with an X-Scissor. Then I switch to Aunt May on a Stone Edge that does minimal damage thanks to Reflect. We use Draining Kiss that does some incredible damage thanks to the special defense drops, which then triggers the Anger Shell ability. Usually this is pretty scary since this doubles their attack and speed, but we get a lucky full paralysis and don't have to see this Crab's Wrath in phase 1 since we completely end it with an alluring voice. Phase 2 starts with a fully healed Meowstic that uses the same strategy as before by setting up Reflect and paralyzing Klawf, but this time we pivot into Quilladin to switch things up a bit. The first thing we do is use Trailblaze to ensure we're faster than Klawf, and after Dolliv takes some attacks for us, we use Bullet Seed, which usually hits only 2 to 5 times, but we are holding the loaded dice, which guarantees this attack to hit 4 to 5 times, essentially making Bullet Seed at least a 100 base power attack. I pictured this part going differently in my head, where the first hit would trigger Anger Shell and then the follow-up attacks would be enough to KO the Titan due to the defense drops, but that doesn't happen at all. And Klawf spitefully eats a Citrus Berry to stay out of Anger Shell range. But my partner Dolliv makes my dream come true by using Helping Hand before my next Bullet Seed, which means we only need 3 hits to bring this Titan down. Not gonna lie, I'm regretting nicknaming you Hulk because you were doing a disappointing amount of damage. So I go out into the woods to find a different non-disappointing grass type and find a Phantom who I nicknamed Beast and evolve them immediately into Trevenant by using a Dust Stone. Yes, it is that hard to find a friend to trade sometimes. With our new and improved team, we head over to Brassius. Do you do this before every gym challenge? Anyways, he starts with a Bramble Gas and I get Iron Man out there. I start with a Burning Jealousy, which gets mitigated by their held Occa Berry, and they survive long enough to set up a layer of spikes. Another Burning Jealousy, dude, what are you doing? Gets the KO and Tropius comes out next. Of course, I continue the trend and use another Burning Jealousy, and Tropius uses Tailwind to give his team a speed advantage. Is that it? You're jealous? Iron Man then gets hit with an Air Slash as I use Copycat to copy their Air Slash, which gets us the KO. I was hoping that we would copy Tailwind instead, but I guess this works out too. Hisuian Electrode makes their debut next and is way faster even without the Tailwind, and Volt switches straight into Sudowoodo. But this is before they terrestrialize to the grass type, so Burning Jealousy does next to nothing. You'll get your turn next, okay? I promise. I obviously can't stay in now since Sudowoodo outspeeds under Tailwind, so I send in my non-jealous grass type, who luckily comes in on a miss as their Tailwind peters out. We're able to use Will-O-Wisp to cut Sudowoodo's damage output in half, and I learned that Leech Seed doesn't affect grass types. The more you know. And after a bit of back and forth, a couple of Shadow Claws combined with the burn chip damage leads to Sudowoodo finally going down. Hisuian Electrode comes back out now, but since they only have resisted attacks against us, they go down to just a couple of Shadow Claws and we earn our second gym badge of the run. Yes, I promise you're gonna get your turn, okay? But the next 4 battles are against types you struggle against. It's now time to head over to Kitakami for the first wave of Titan phase, and not only are these fights difficult since all 4 of these Titans are legendary Pokemon, but the level cap doesn't allow us to have fully evolved starters, and they each get one of their stat boosts double before every battle. So to combat this, I make my way over to an Inkay who I nicknamed Venom and evolve them into Malamar for a very special reason you'll see in a moment. Thank goodness this game didn't make me turn my Switch upside down. The first fight is against Munkidori, and they double their special defense as soon as the battle begins. I start with Meowstic as Carmine sends in Gliscor, and we get a Thunder Wave to paralyze the Titan, a popular strategy you'll see against all these Titan fights. And as soon as Munkidori is paralyzed, I switch into Malamar to finish off the fight. Carmine's Gliscor is unfortunately the first victim of the fight, but Malamar can repeatedly use Night Slash in order to do some decent damage. And alongside Carmine's Morpeko, Munkidori goes down soon enough to a double up of Thunder Punch and another Night Slash crit. Okidogi is next and poses a little bit more of a threat, partly because they double their defense at the start of the fight, but mainly because I forgot to teach Malamar's Psycho Cut for this fight, which is quite effective against this poison fighting type. I do, however, use Malamar's signature move Topsy Turvy to turn Okidogi's defense boost into defense drops, essentially allowing our physical attacks to do double damage instead of half damage. It takes a few more turns than it should have, being that Night Slash is my best attacking move and it's resisted, but Okidogi goes down soon enough to a double power acrobatics from Carmine's Gliscor. The last Titan is Fezandipiti, and even though we have the strategy of starting the fight by paralyzing each Titan, this only neutralizes the speed boost, meaning I've only gained a 25% chance of paralysis, which barely ends up mattering in this fight. Meowstic is able to stay in for an extra turn and get off a charm to lower their physical attack, which means I can switch in Breaks In relatively for free on a resisted Dazzling Gleam. From here, we embark on an adventure to try and outlast the Titan while Psybeam is doing decent damage, I guess, but Fezandipiti is the first Titan to take out all of Carmine's Pokemon. Her Heracross did do us a solid and lower their attack and speed before going down, but things get quite scary as my middle stage starter is staring down a Titan Legendary. I eventually need to switch to Vivillon in order to preserve one of my precious starters, and they immediately get poisoned on the switch. We did pack a Pecha Berry to cure the poison, but I didn't want to burn it so soon. We go for the Paraflinch strategy with Air Slash, but of course we don't get the flinch or the paralysis, and they get another poison on the very next turn. Great! So now it comes down to this, risking my precious Butterfly in an Air Slash flinch, and we get the flinch. At this point, I'm unsure if one more Air Slash can get the KO, but my Butterfly looks me right in the face and instills confidence that they can do it. So I let her have it, and Vivillon manages to finish off the Titan as we remain completely deathless. Can't say the same for Carmine though. Well, after that short pit stop in Kitakami, it's time to take on yet another Titan, widely considered as being the most difficult since they are the only Titan in the game that doesn't allow for healing between phases. So after watching Bombardier's balls drop, it's time to show them that mine already have. Meowstic begins the fight, and I'm hoping I'm baiting a super effective Sucker Punch, so I use Yawn hoping it fails, but to my demise, of course, it's a Drill Run. That crits. We do come somewhat prepared though and use Protect the next turn to ensure they fall asleep without taking any damage, and use Charm to lower this thing's attack to protect our precious Aunt May as they switch into a Bombardier that wakes up immediately on the first turn possible to hit us with a Rock Tomb. Aunt May has to take yet another cluster of balls to the face as we retaliate with a Draining Kiss, which when paired with a Big Root almost heals back to full HP and allows us to stay healthy enough to take this fight into phase 2 on the next turn. We start phase 2 with our weakened Meowstic, and the strategy remains the same. Hope Bombardier targets Nagelstack so we can get off. Of course they target me with a Rock Tomb, and thank goodness it didn't crit this time. We use Protect as they target me again and fall asleep after taking a smackdown from Arven's Nagelstack, who's proving to be very helpful in this fight. We follow the same strategy and use Charm to lower their attack before I switch in Aunt May almost for nothing since Arven is managing to do most of the damage himself. But just like the comics, Aunt May swoops in to take the KO with her alluring voice to bring back the spotlight. Arven, I don't really care about these herbs you're trying to get, I'm just trying to get close to you so I can get to your dad. Did I say that out loud? So in pursuit of impressing the sexy professor, we arrive at the first Team Star base of the run. And if you guessed Giacomo would have a full team of 5 and all the Starmobiles in this run would also be part Steel type, you would be right. And after not blowing Professor Clavell's disguise, I mean, seriously, did anyone really get fooled by this? We break into Team Star's base, use our trusty companions to defeat 30 dark types, and end up in a duel much more meaningful than Pokemon. Dark versus light, evil versus good, Morgrem versus Sylveon, Thunderwave versus a Cherry Berry, and an angelic voice to get the KO. As you may expect, Sylveon doesn't have a problem clearing the first 4 Pokemon of Giacomo's team. Of course, Aunt May destroys Sableye with 1 hit, but Murkrow is a bit faster and is able to get off a wing attack before going down. And Krokorok attempts to be annoying by learning from Nemona and using degenerate evasion strats, but Aunt May proves to be too clutch and takes the KO with a Draining Kiss to not only get the KO, but also get back to full health. Revavroom comes out now, and I will admit I have played this game a few times and know what to expect at this point. Usually Giacomo likes to try and set up with Shift Gear to raise their attack and speed, but he will do this until he's able to outspeed and one-shot my entire team. So I formulated a strategy to combat this. The first step was to switch into Frogadier to shake off the accuracy drop, and then use their newly acquired Chilling Water, which not only deals a little damage, but also drops the target's attack stat 1 stage, which means I can effectively make the Starmobile continue to spam Shift Gear until I get the KO, or until he gets fed up and tries to KO me with a Wicked Torque. So I switch back to Aunt May, hoping they don't have a Steel move, and I'm pretty sure they don't because I go on a long series of using Charm until they're at -6 attack before going on the offense. Usually Alluring Voice confuses the opponent if they use a setup move on the same turn, but I guess I'm learning that Starmobiles are immune to confusion as well. But we are able to bring their attack down so much that all they do is try to raise their attack back up as we use Alluring Voice 7 more times to get the KO. The good news is that the second hardest Starmobile has been taken care of, and the bad news is that the last Starmobile is also the hardest. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because it is time to make our way back to Kitakami and face off against all 4 types of Ogerpon. Of course, they're going to be trash slicing into a different type every phase, which also gives them a unique stat boost. This means that Kitakami Titans are officially harder than the Paldean ones. The first phase is Fire Pond, and this one starts off with an attack boost, so I use a similar strategy in our last battle and have Frogadier use Chilling Water to keep their attack at neutral. But it also does way more damage to Ogerpon than it did to the Starmobile. And minus the quick scare of getting Vine Whipped, Fire Pond goes down to just 3 Chilling Waters. Water Pond comes out next to get a special defense boost, so we U-turn straight into the Hulk on a Vine Whip. We then use Trailblaze as she tries to set up with Growth, and since this raises our speed, we get to attack first the next turn to bring down Water Pond and start the next phase. Rock Pond comes out and starts this fight with a defense boost, but of course Rock is still weak to grass, so I have Quilladin use Trailblaze again as she retaliates with a huge rock type Ivy Cudgel. I try to protect to get some leftovers recovery, but I get punished immediately as she freely sets up with Growth, which means that Hulk is definitely dead to another attack. So with great sadness, I decide to sack my precious butterfly since they're quad weak to rock. Just kidding, they're holding the Focus Sash. But after narrowly surviving, I clench my cheeks as Vivian uses the 97% accurate Sleep Powder, which does connect and save her life once again. Surely a 97% accurate move won't lead to me losing my butterfly in the future, right? So now we switch to the always reliable Aunt May, and after a combination of a few charms to reduce their attack, Sylveon can take the KO with a few draining kisses and be at full health as the last phase of Ogerpon starts. I start this phase by lowering their attack with Charm, which grants me a fairly free switch to Braixen. In hindsight, I wish I would have gone for Burning Jealousy since this move burns the target if they had a stat boost in the same turn, and I think it'd be a really cool tech, but a Will-O-Wisp works just the same I guess, but much less flashy. And I kick myself even harder because of how much damage Burning Jealousy does, which makes me realize I just wasted a turn and 10 seconds of my life I'll never get back. But a win is a win, and of course Ogerpon prefers me as a trainer instead of Kieran. Any resemblance to the new villain or just me? Our vacation in Kitakami gets cut short because I caught wind that the next Gym Leaders Challenge is trusting some kid with their wallet. Oh yes, in this version Iono is the 4th Gym Leader, which does make more sense to continue your journey to the next town rather than circling back across the map. And with Kofu's money, I buy as many rare candies as my heart desires and evolve our 3 Colossian starters into their final form, as well as my second favorite regional bird, Talonflame. First is Kilowattrel, by the way. Electrifying is just too good to pass up. So with the fully stacked crew, we make our way to the— oh, come on. Is Nemona going to be that annoying rival that challenges you every 2 gyms? She leads with Lycanroc as I lead with my newly evolved Greninja, and he debuts quite poorly as a loaded dice Water Shuriken does manage to get all 5 hits, but not the knockout. The random Sandstorm probably helped her special defense, and we have to take a Trailblaze in return. Greninja is far from the tankiest Pokemon, so this definitely matters. Because although I believe I have the type advantage against Nemona's next Pokemon, another failed KO coming off a stab super effective Dark Pulse leads to the almost tragedy of losing my favorite starter. Could you imagine if Play Rough was 100% accurate? So after getting extremely fortunate and being able to take the second KO of the fight, a Spathra comes out. I'm not ready to part ways with Greninja just yet, so I U-turn into Talonflame, who takes a resisted Dazzling Gleam on the switch. And then we get hit by the imaginary Sandstorm? How is the Sandstorm even raging right now? Because the Spathra gets a speed boost, my Speedy Bird has to take a Lumina Crash first and then disappoints me by not getting the KO with a Temper Flare. But I guess one good thing about the imaginary Sandstorm is that it does help me in this situation and takes out a Spathra. Thanks, dog. Beartick is out now, and I'm thinking he'll use some type of ice move, so I think I make the smart decision by U-turning into Delphox. But he takes a super effective Liquidation instead. Perfect. Both starters are off to a stellar debut. So now I need to switch again, and I finally get a call right as Sylveon comes in on a resisted Night Slash. A Draining Kiss and an Alluring Voice eventually net us the KO, but not before we take an Icicle Crash in the process. Nemona's final Pokemon comes out, and I'm not sure I'll ever understand this AI because after trash slicing into the grass type, she opts for Throat Chop to try and hit Sylveon as I switch into Chestnut. Good news for me though, and after using Chestnut's incredible defense to take a Shadow Claw and a Flower Trick, we use a couple of Drain Punches to get the K, or I'll just let the Sandstorm do it again, I guess. Funny how the Invisible Sandstorm has more KOs than Greninja in this fight, and it even hits Chestnut as the battle ends. Not that it mattered here, but would that have counted as a death since the fight is over? I say yes. So after answering life's hardest questions and dealing with our annoying rival, it's time to take on Kofu to get our 3rd gym badge. Hey Kofu, if I beat you, you gotta shave the brow.
No. Not again.
I lead with Greninja against his Slowking and start off by using Taunt to avoid any status shenanigans. But I found out the hard way that this thing has Oblivious and I just waste a turn and get hit with a Surf. But Greninja quickly makes up for this by getting the Dark Pulse flinch on the next turn, which leads to a Dark Pulse KO on the following turn. A fellow Gen 6er comes out and for some reason we both use Dark Pulse against each other. Don't they have any other better move to use than that? So with Greninja getting quite low, we U-turn into Chestnut, who tanks the hit just fine. But Kofu has the 1000 IQ play to switch his Ace Crabominable into a Trailblaze to guarantee that Chestnut has the speed advantage for the rest of this fight. I am a bit nervous about Chestnut missing the KO and not living this next Ice Hammer, so I take it slow and use Spiky Shield and the Sandstorm Chip to guarantee the range. This way a loaded dice Bullet Seed is guaranteed. I guess I didn't need to do all that, but with the speed boost, Hulk is able to take out both of Kofu's remaining Pokemon with a Bullet Seed apiece. Golduck and Clawitzer never knew what hit him, and now Kofu needs to shave his unibrow. It's time to make our way to the other side of the map now, and the first step before taking on Iono is to defeat the Fire Team Star leader Mela. I'm quite disappointed in Greninja's performance so far this run, but I want to give him another chance and see if he can make up for it against a type where he clearly has the advantage. First, he makes me clench my cheeks as he somehow needs all 5 hits to get the KO on Pyroar. But the good news is that the next 3 Pokemon go down much easier. Tauros doesn't even stand a chance, Torkoal's special defense is quite weak, and Talonflame frustratingly gets off an Aerial Ace with their Gale Wings ability. But Greninja proves to be too powerful for most of the Team Shadar squad. The Starmobile comes out, and again I learn another valuable lesson that Slowkings can't be taunted, and I guess Starmobiles can't be taunted either. And with them getting off a Screech to cut my defense in half, I have one more turn in me at best before we go down, so we use this time to set up the rain before pivoting out into Clawitzer. Yes, I stole Kofu's money and his Pokemon. Just kidding, I found a Clawitzer of my own, named him Cyclops, and evolved them into Clauncher. And with their Mega Launcher ability, Stab, and the Rain, I was expecting a one-shot with Water Pulse. But these water types are just disappointing me left and right this run. So after suffering a similar fate, getting Screeched and hit with an extreme speed, we're able to flip turn out of there and go into the Giant Killer Venom. Ironhead does do a huge amount of damage on the first turn, but we thankfully don't get flinched and land a superpower that raises our attack and defense thanks to our Contrary ability. But of course, we get flinched on the next turn by another Ironhead that does noticeably less damage, especially after our berry. And now that the rain's gone, I guess Mela gave up on her flinching hopes and uses a Blazing Torque that fails to do anything besides minimal damage, and they go down to one last superpower from Venom. Kinda disappointing that neither water type could complete the sweep, but this Ursula looking squid could. Anyways, we arrive at my favorite city, Levincia, and after a silly game of hide and seek with Professor Clavell, I decide we need one more piece to complete this puzzle against Iono and find a Floette who I named Rogue and evolve them into Florges. They have some incredible special defense that'll be much needed in this double battle. This is the first of 4 double battles against the gym leaders and probably one of the toughest since I don't get access to any ground types for this run. I lead with Talonflame and Meowstic as Iono leads with Alolan Raichu and Bellibolt. Yes, risky I know, but the first step is to set up a light screen with Meowstic to raise my team's special defense and give Talonflame the expert belt so they can one-shot Raichu with a U-turn and bring in Greninja almost for free as they're holding Wakan Berry to better survive this parabolic charge. And it's crazy because all 3 attacks that landed this turn crit. Ampharos comes out now, and the next part of my plan involves Meowstic setting up the Psychic Terrain while Greninja once again U-turns out of there and goes into Delphox as we take a fairly soft parabolic charge. And Ampharos pointlessly sets up a Reflect since every attack from here on out is going to be on the special side. Now that the setup is complete, I have both Psychic types out with Psychic Terrain. We proceed to take the double knockout by having both of my Pokemon use Expanding Force, which is now a spread attack on Psychic Terrain. Iono sends out her last 2 Pokemon being Kilowattrel and her Ace Miss Magus, and I'm unsure if Meowstic can take any more damage at this point. So after Iono terrestrializes into the electric type, I have Meowstic Baton Pass out of there and into Florges, who takes a fairly soft Electro Ball, and Delphox can get the KO on Kilowattrel with an Expanding Force. And on the last turn of the match, I have Florges use a Helping Hand to pointlessly boost Delphox's Expanding Force even further, which of course gets the KO and nets us our 4th gym badge of the run. Take that, Iono, I'll show you who the real content creator is. The next stop on our journey is Orthworm, but something I've learned playing these games a few times is that it doesn't matter how hard someone tries to make this game, Orthworm will always be the easiest Titan. He does surprisingly need to be hit by 2 Mystical Fires in order to end Phase 1, which usually only takes 1 shot, and Phase 2 is a bit harder since they're holding an Occa Berry to reduce the power of a super effective fire move, but without any sign of intelligence coming from their move selection, Delphox needs to take a resisted Iron Tail and Body Press in order to easily survive and take the KO with just 4 missed mystical fires. The real challenge in this area lies just ahead of us against Atticus, the Team Star Poison leader, because although poison types do have 2 weaknesses, many of his Pokemon have a secondary typing to completely negate it, and even though the Starmobile is quad weak to ground moves, we again don't have a ground type to take advantage of that. So instead I find some Pokemon to craft some unique strategies and name them Doc Ock, Black Widow, and The Thing. Yes, this is Hisui and Avalugg, the Rock Ice type, trying to show off more unique Pokemon here. So the fight starts with his Skuntank against my Dragalge. Of course he gets the flinch with Dark Pulse on the very first turn, but this just delays the inevitable because Dragalge uses an adaptability boosted Draco Meteor to get the one-shot. This is one of my favorite techs to watch out for in the rest of this video. Draco Meteor usually has the drawback of lowering the user's special attack by 2 stages, but by holding the eject pack we can immediately switch to another Pokemon without any consequences. Grafaiai comes out next, and of course I don't get the flinch with Air Slash, so we just have to take a pretty nasty double edge. And for some odd reason, Atticus uses Endure on the next turn as I try to KO them with a perfectly accurate Water Pulse, and then the turn goes to waste as Water Pulse just KOs them the next turn. Galarian Slowbro comes out next, and to prevent this tanky behemoth from doing anything to my team, I use yet another Draco Meteor paired with the eject pack to do some insane damage and pivot into Greninja as Slowbro just fails a substitute due to not enough HP left. He does get the Quick Claw proc on the next turn, but a priority Water Shuriken still moves first and gets us the KO. Never thought that would come in handy. For some reason I didn't pack any better moves on Greninja, so as Alolan Muck comes out we go for another Water Shuriken to do some pitiful damage as Muck just does huge damage by knocking off my Citrus Berry. So on the next turn we U-turn out into our newest team member who shrugs off a crunch on the switch and is able to outspeed and use their signature move Mountain Gale to get the KO. Toxapeck comes out next, and since I'm not trying to get poisoned, I switch to Dragalge on the Toxic and use an adaptability boosted Draco Meteor to only do half. Toxapeck is way tankier than I give them credit for, but basically blind as a bat since they whiff a muddy water. With my special attack lowered, I can't stay in anymore, so I flip turn into Noivern, who does get hit with a muddy water, but luckily no accuracy drop. But I still frustratingly miss a 90% accurate move, and this leads to Noivern getting Toxic. This doesn't end up mattering too much though, as Noivern can connect on the next turn to KO Atticus' last Pokemon before his Starmobile comes out. I don't want the Toxic damage to stack up, so I start by using U-turn. Didn't realize they had Toxic Debris, which allows them to set up a layer of Toxic Spikes, so the first thing I need to do is switch into Dragalge to clean up the Toxic Spikes first. I then realize I need to hard switch into my next Pokemon to avoid them being poisoned on entry, so I forego using Flip Turn and just hard switch into Avalugg into a double edge. It doesn't seem as though the Starmobile has anything to hit me with besides resisted moves, so this is another long drawn out Starmobile fight that is basically unlosable. Because even though Bulldoze isn't doing as much damage as I'd like, Uproar is doing basically nothing, and when we get low enough on health to risk a crit, we can outspeed due to the speed drops and use Recover to stay healthy. And then it's just a matter of time before the thing eventually gets the KO with one final Bulldoze. The next fight, or fights should I say, have been a roadblock in my previous run, since not only is Larry packing another double battle, but the Pokemon we use against Larry are also the same Pokemon we need to use against Nemona, who challenges us immediately after the fight. So I take the time to craft a team of the ultimate superheroes, order myself some Fire Blast style Rice Balls, and take on Larry. He starts with an Oinky and Arboliva as I lead with Greninja and Vivillon. The first plan of action is a U-turn into Arboliva to set up the grassy terrain with her Seed Sower ability so I can get Chestnut in, who's holding the grassy seed to boost his defense for a tech you'll see in a moment. But I'm pumped that Chestnut gets in for free in a Pollen Puff because of our bulletproof ability. And here I was thinking that ability was useless. And Vivillon is able to put the pig to sleep with another 97% accurate sleep powder. Now that we've completely neutralized Larry, Vivillon can get the KO on a weakened Arboliva with an Air Slash, and Chestnut can complete the double KO by body pressing into Oinky, which uses our defense to deal damage rather than our attack stat. This does give Larry a free switch into both Weirdeer and Greedent, but the only real threat here is the Weirdeer. So I double into him with a U-turn to bring in Avalugg and body press for the KO while Greedent just tries to stuff their cheeks. Don't act like you're actually going to try to do something in this fight. The Dunsparce makes their way out as Larry's new ace, but has a pitiful performance as they go down to a single body press after terrestrializing into the normal type. And now it's just a 2-on-1 against Larry's chubby squirrel. As much as they try to fight back with a Seed Bomb, a double up of body press and Mountain Gale is just too much for the overweight squirrel to withstand. And now we walk away with our 5th gym badge. Is what I would say if Nemona wasn't always lurking trying to battle me. So without being able to change our Pokemon or hold items, we get down to brass tacks with Nemona right outside Larry's gym. She leads with a supposed Meowscarada as I lead with Greninja. I initially thought this would be a free KO as I launch a quad effective U-turn into them, but my spidey senses started tingling when I realized that this wasn't very effective, and it turns out she led with the Hisuian Zoroark. Not really having any better options, I pivot to Noivern, who just has to take a Hyper Voice before retaliating with a Draco Meteor to finish them off. And of course I have my eject pack attached, which lets me switch Greninja back in as Nemona sends out her Tauros. And luckily during the Larry battle, Greninja learned Extra Sensory, which allows us to turn into the Psychic type for the extra damage and get the one-shot. Haxorus comes out now, and unsure if I can live any hit from them, I U-turn into Avalugg on a crunch to get some Rocky Helmet damage. Realizing Haxorus probably has a Steel move which would definitely take me out since it's quad effective, I switch into Noivern, who can tank it somewhat well and retaliate with the Dragon Pulse to finish them off. Hisuian Goodra comes out, and doubting I can one-shot them, I switch to Delphox on a not very effective Ice Beam, but thankfully doesn't freeze. It's a bit of a stall battle since this thing has such high special defense, but by using Mystical Fire that always reduces the target's special attack by 1 stage, we can stay relatively healthy before taking the KO with the Psychic Noise. I switch it up at the end there to get the Throat Spray proc to increase my special attack, but that tech completely goes to waste as Braviary comes out and I realize I probably cannot one-shot them. So instead I go to Avalugg on a double edge so Braviary can take recoil damage from the move and the Rocky Helmet, and then I switch to Greninja on a resistant Iron Head, who surprisingly takes it quite well. And then I proceed to U-turn into Avalugg and repeat this process 2 more times until the Rocky Helmet chip damage eventually takes out Braviary. I really didn't want that to happen because I wanted Greninja out there as Nemona's final Pokemon came out to be able to do some chip damage with U-turn, but not everything works out how you plan. So instead I switch to Chestnut as Meowscarada trash slices into the Ghost type and I get in for free on a Seed Bomb. Bulletproof is a much better ability than I thought. And then after taking a resisted Throat Chop on the next turn, Chestnut is able to finish the job and the fight with a super effective knockoff. If you thought this fight was tough, it pales in comparison to the fight against Nemona before Ryme. And just because she inspired me, I went to go catch a Gumi who I nicknamed Colossus and find out they can evolve into Hisuian Sliggoo and then Hisuian Goodra in this game. As long as I can find the rain, of course, which was kind of a pain, not gonna lie. But before Ryme, there's another gym switch up and we first need to take on Tulip and her gym challenge. I'm sorry, Cyclops, I know it's hard expressing your emotions sometimes, but you're doing great. There's been a few fights now where I learned things the hard way, like grass types can't be leech seeded, Starmobiles and Oblivious Slowkings can't be taunted, but this fight against Tulip teaches me yet another valuable lesson. She leads with the Spathra and I lead with Meowstic. I try to be cute and use skill swaps so my Pokemon can have speed boost instead, but she's holding the ability shield to block it. Bro, what the f is this prep? So we just have to eat an energy ball instead. I really wanted the speed boost for my future plan, but instead we just used Calm Mind to raise our special attack and special defense a few times before Thunder Waving the absolute shit out of this Ostrich and baton passing our stat boost to Malamar, who takes a reduced amount of damage now. Even a Dazzling Gleam doesn't do too much with our Hell Assault Vest, and we're able to take the KO with a single nice. Okay, so I guess this does work out better because the Spathra gets fully paralyzed, which allows us to get the KO with a superpower, giving us an attack and defense boost. But Gallade comes out next, and I know they have the Sharpness ability boosting the power of a quad effective X Scissor, so I waste all of my boost and switch into our newly acquired Goodra, who tanks it beautifully. I of course can't keep a Steel type in against a fighting type, so I switch into Delphox on a resisted Drain Punch. And after a little back and forth, Delphox can assert their dominance and get the KO with just a few Dazzling Gleams. This disgusting abomination comes in next, and obviously fire is weak to water, so I send in Greninja to tank the Wave Crash, who along with the chip damage from recoil can get the KO with a stab super effective Dark Pulse. Tulip then takes a page out of my book and sends in a Delphox of her own. Fearing a Dazzling Gleam, I U-turn into Goodra, who gets hit with a Flamethrower and she steals my Assault Vest. Flamethrower obviously does more damage now, but so does Knockoff since we're holding an item now, and this enables us to get the one-shot. That's what you get. Farigiraf comes out next, and wanting to set up for the endgame, I hard switch into Cyclops as they set up a nasty plot. Great. So I brace myself to lose my sweet baby Cyclops as I get one last Dark Pulse in that does some respectable damage as Tulip just throws and goes for nasty plot again? Thanks, Tulip. So now with the throw of the century, Cyclops can take the KO with another Dark Pulse. Florges comes out next and does herself a disservice by terrestrializing into the Psychic type as Dark Pulse does some terrible damage and Giga Drain does way more to me. Realizing that this is probably a losing battle, I flip turn into Malamar, who can tank Giga Drain way better and finish the fight with one last Night Slash since Florges' physical defense is way worse than their special defense. And after obtaining our 6th gym badge and attempting to get our 7th, it's time to get interrupted one last time by Nemona before the champion fight in front of the school. In this fight, she's packing a Rapska, Lucario, Garchomp, Sneasler, Corviknight, and Terra. Who knows what type Meowscarada, so we definitely have our work cut out for us. So we decide to fight on the main stage without a soul in the crowd as she leads with the Rapska against my Vivian. I of course use Sleep Powder to mitigate any chances of taking damage and U-turn into Greninja as Rapska Rika stays asleep, which allows me to come in for free and take the KO with a single Dark Pulse. Lucario comes out now, and thinking he'll use a fighting move, I switch into Delphox, but he uses a Steel Beam? Fairly powerful attack, but at the expense of half his health, which means my heavily damaged Delphox can take the KO with a single Mystical Fire. Cynthia's Garchomp comes out now, and fearing an Earthquake, I switch to Chestnut, who resists it. We then use the obligatory Spiky Shield to scout out her moves and get some chip damage, and I find out that she locks herself into Outrage. Outrageous. This gives me the free switch to Sylveon, who can take advantage of one of her newly learned moves in this game that is completely broken. Strength Sap. The idea here is we need to avoid a few crits, but we can use Strength Sap to not only lower Garchomp's attack, but also get HP back every single time it's used. So after we get their attack lowered to a comfortable amount, we can start going for Draining Kiss to do some good damage, but to also stay healthy. So after Garchomp is neutralized, Sneasler makes their way out and is of course wanting to use some type of poison move, which means Goodra can come in for free on a Dire Claw. We get hit with a Screech as we use Bulldoze to lower their speed, and unsure if the defense drop means that we can now get taken out, we switch to Vivian on a quad resisted Brick Break. Since we're faster now, we can put this thing to sleep and U-turn back into Goodra for free as we continue to get lucky with sleep turns. And although Sneasler does wake up on the very next turn, a Chople Berry ensures Brick Break comes nowhere close to getting the KO, and we can finish them off with another Bulldoze. Corviknight comes out next, and what happens here is the stall battle of the year, but I'm going to summarize it for you. Goodra is able to set up 3 shelters to boost our defense to +6, which means our defense has now quadrupled and we can go on the offense with Body Press. We were able to do this because our Shell Armor ability prevents any type of critical hits. But in the meantime, Corviknight is trying to use Tailwind to get the speed advantage and holding the Rocky Helmet, which means we get hit with chip damage every time we attack. And side note, how does a +6 Body Press do this little damage? But anyway, we stall a little with Life Dew to get health back and plan to take the KO the very same turn the Tailwind ends, which means the already fast Grass Cat doesn't even get more of a speed advantage. Not really sure why I went through the trouble of timing it up, because Meowscarada is way faster than Goodra and would outspeed regardless. But unsure of their Terra type and not wanting to whip a Body Press into a Ghost type, I first start with a Bulldoze to lower their speed as I take a fairly soft Throat Chop. And because they Terastallize into the Dark type and are doing minimal damage to Goodra, we're able to KO with a +6 Body Press that would have KO'd them almost 3 times over. Probably the hardest Nemona fight of the game, since Nemona uses Pokemon up to level 63, which also happens to be the same level cap as the fight against Ryme. So now that the opening act is over, we proceed to take on Ryme in a classic double battle, which sometimes is the easiest depending on the stat boost given by the crowd. She leads with Skeledirge and Houndstone as I lead with Noivern and Greninja. Should we normalize starters being used by gym leaders? I vote yes. Greninja disappoints me yet again as he fails to KO another Houndstone with a Dark Pulse. Should have learned from last time. And Skeledirge is too bulky to be taken down by a single Draco Meteor by Noivern as I pivot into Dragalge to Draco Pack it again, and an Earth Power hits Greninja as Dragalge pointlessly gets Will-O-Wisp. The crowd gives us an attack boost, not wanting to waste my eject pack strategy, I decide to take the double knockout with the Water Shuriken and Sludge Bomb. We get yet another attack boost as Gengar and Spiritomb enter the field, and after Spiritomb switches places with Gengar by using Ally Switch, Greninja disappoints me for the second time this battle because even though his attack is doubled at this point, he still can't get the one shot. But Dragalge doesn't let me down as he KOs Gengar by dropping a Draco. Ryme sends out her second starter with the Fire Ghost type, and that has me thinking. Ember is the third firefighting starter in a row and is rumored to get a Mega and ZA coming up. Wouldn't it be hilarious if they were not only the third firefighter starter in a row, but also the third Fire Ghost starter in a row? Anyway, Noivern comes out and I'm not loving my chances of survival with Greninja, so I pivot into Malamar with a U-turn as we take an onslaught of Swift and Icy Wind to give us a speed drop and a speed boost due to Malamar's contrary ability. Noivern is still faster on the next turn, able to get the KO on Spiritomb to get Cyclops out to close the fight, and Malamar can now outspeed to get the KO on Typhlosion with a Night Slash. This leaves Ryme with her lone Toxtricity in a 2-on-1 situation, and because they Terastallize into the Ghost type, Speed Boosted Malamar and Choice Scarf Clauncher are able to combine attacks and take them down before they have a chance to move. And that's how we got our 7th gym badge. Only one more double battle gym fight remains before we can enter the Elite Four, but before we take on Grusha and his ice types, we need to take down the last remaining Team Star leaders. First is Ortega, and even though Generation 6 introduced the Fairy typing, it doesn't mean they have very good answers to a Fairy type specialist. And since I can't bring Chestnut due to their fighting typing, I find the next best answer by catching a Skiddo I nicknamed Juggernaut and evolve them into Go-Go before taking on Ortega. He leads with Darkspun and I lead Dragalge. They do get off a neutral play rough, but it is I who has the last laugh because I finally get the one shot with a Sludge Bomb. Tinkaton comes out now and I'm risking Dragalge's life literally for no reason except for the fact that I think it would be cool to get Delphox in for free, so after nearly dying to a Gigaton Hammer, we get off a slow flip turn to do just that. I found out the hard way that they're holding an Occa Berry to take reduced damage from a Mystical Fire, but it's a good thing thing I got in for free, otherwise this knockoff would have KO'd me for sure. But after taking the KO with the second Mystical Fire, Azumarill comes in threatening an obvious water move, so I send in my trusty little crustacean who tanks it well. And Azumarill tanks a Choice Scarf Sludge Bomb way better than I thought. But at least we did get the poison, and although Superpower nearly takes out Cyclops, the good news is that this drops her attack and defense by 1 stage each. This allows Go-Go to get in relatively for free and can even take the KO with the Horn Leech the next turn to get back to almost full HP. But now Galarian Weezing makes his appearance next and is threatening some type of poison move, so I switch into Goodra on a Defog. Not sure what's really happening here, but Weezing lets me set up 3 shelters to get to +6 defense again, and all he does is use Defog. And then he just lets me use Flash Cannon for the KO. Like, what happened here? But now I'm not threatened by Grimmsnarl since I can't be critically hit either due to our Shell Armor ability, and I can also get another one-shot with another Flash Cannon. The Starmobile comes out now and sets up their special defense with Amnesia, but this is all a waste because I'm planning on attacking on the physical side with Body Press. With my defense quadrupled and leftovers keeping my HP up, even super effective high horsepowers aren't doing much, and it's only a matter of time before Goodra can take the KO with just a few Body Presses. Weezing made this fight way easier than it should have been, but I'm not complaining, especially because the next Team Star leader is by far the hardest. Never mind her team, her Starmobile is part Steel type and has the ability Scrappy, which means that there is no type combination in the game that can resist its fighting, normal, and ground type coverage, and their signature move Combat Torque can paralyze you. So after some theory crafting and a few potential sacrifices brought to the fight, we take on Eerie. She leads with Annihilate as I lead with Meowstic. My first turn may look like a mistake, but I promise that there's a method to the madness. The first thing I do is set up Reflect, so that way the incoming Rage Fist does half the usual damage. And now you probably think I'm crazy because my Flame Orb procced and I burnt myself, but I used Trick on the next turn to give the Flame Orb to Annihilate so he can be burnt at the end of his turn. I just needed to set up Reflect first to have the immediate damage reduction because I also need to set up a Calm Mind, which means I need to tank 3 Rage Fists before going down and baton passing all of my boosts to Aunt May. This way she can come in basically for free and also tank the incoming poison jabs much better than she normally would. And to my surprise, I don't get poisoned as I use Strength Sap to lower their attack even more, and Trailblaze to boost my speed to outspeed the potential threats in the back. But I decide not to push my luck too much and take the KO the following turn with the Moonblast. Phalanx comes in and goes right back out to another Moonblast. Really wish that Pokemon was better. And now Hawlucha comes out, and to my surprise they're still faster even after my speed boost. This means I have to take a ton of damage before getting off a Strength Sap to lower their attack and regain some HP. I'm trying to get Sylveon as many stat boosts as possible before the Starmobile comes out because I'm not sure how else I'm going to be able to take them down, and Hawlucha was good enough to get off another Calm Mind and another speed boost before taking them out as well. Palmont comes out, and again I'm able to get off another Calm Mind at some point by using the same strategy, but Palmont ruins it because they start using Super Fang, which always cuts my HP in half. So I decide to get rid of them with the Moonblast, but now I'm at half HP as the part Steel type Lucario comes in. I'm wanting to get some health back before going on the offense, but I foolishly click Calm Mind instead of Strength Sap, which means I learned the hard way that Lucario knows the priority physical Bullet Punch, which means this misplay just cost me my entire setup strategy. Had I clicked Strength Sap, I'd be fine, but now I need to go for Plan B, and Plan B involves the old reliable Malamar who comes in on a Bullet Punch, can take the KO with a superpower, which means at the very least we'll have a +1 attack and defense boost as the Starmobile comes out. I was hesitant to go with this next strategy since several status moves have failed against the Starmobile, but I don't really have any other options at this point. I know the Starmobile loves to set up with Shift Gear before being able to one-shot my entire team, so I take the risk and use Malamar's signature move Topsy Turvy. This means that now instead of the Starmobile being at +4 speed and +2 attack, they're now at -4 speed and -2 attack. I'm so glad this move actually worked, and this means that we're safe to spam Superpower to finish off the Starmobile, which only makes us stronger and bulkier as we use it. Just look how little this Giga Impact did. A 150 base power move. But with one last superpower, my little squid can take the KO and remove the biggest threat of the game. With all of Team Star defeated at this point, it's time to get our final remaining gym badge. And after skiing the slopes of Glaciato Mountain and recruiting one last team member to the team, we're ready to complete our gym journey. Grusha is yet another double battle, and he leads with Titan and Frostlass. I lead with Talonflame and the newly acquired Sabertooth and try to go on the offense immediately by hitting Titan with a Flare Blitz. But their red card accidentally does me a favor and ensures Talonflame is safe as they return to my party, and Malamar comes out for free. Pyroar can finish the job with a Burning Jealousy that also hits Frostlass as she sets up a light screen. Surely this reduction of damage won't cost me my newest team member, right? Grusha withdraws Frostlass and sends out his ace to take damage instead, and Cryogonal uses Hyper Beam into Malamar? A red card? Hyper Beam? What is this gym battle right now? But Venom can KO Cryogonal with a superpower in retaliation. Now Avalugg makes their way onto the field, and as Altaria grass slices into the ice type, I am so confident that Burning Jealousy will certainly KO Avalugg since they have a special defensive stat of 46. Wait, they survived that? Meaning that I probably should have double targeted Avalugg, otherwise he'll the newest team member. And also the most expendable team member. I have 2 other fire types I care more about, and that was the first death of the run, and honestly it just takes the pressure off of trying to do this deathless. Anyways, after that minor inconvenience, Cyclops joins Venom to finish the fight, and with a Choice Scarf Aura Sphere and a single Night Slash, Grusha's last 2 remaining Pokemon are defeated. With that being our last gym badge, we only have 3 Titans remaining in our quest before we reach the Elite Four. So we head on over to Asado Desert to take on the first of the 3 Titans, Iron Treads. As always, the first phase of any Titan fight is never really that hard, and with random AI preventing you from coming up with an actual game plan, I decided to throw in Greninja to use Water Shuriken to take the KO after taking a fairly soft Heavy Slam. I come to my senses in phase 2 and send in a more expendable team member this time, and it's only now that I realize Iron Treads has Wild Charge, and that could have been the end of Greninja. But I go unpunished. After getting off a single Aura Sphere, I send in Chestnut to finish off the fight. Although we frustratingly don't get the final blow of the Titan, we do deal the majority of the damage with some massive body presses. Clavell is the one who manages to take the final blow with the Seed Bomb, but not before nearly going down themselves. With no time to waste to ensure Arven's dog gets the treatment he needs, we head over to Casseroya Lake to take on the last 2 remaining Titans in a 3-phase Titan battle. Dondozo's first phase is easily handled by Chestnut and abusing Spiky Shield. Spiky Shield deals 1/8 of the opponent's maximum HP, but it feels like so much more in a Titan. But that combined with loaded dice bullet seeds leads to the end of the first phase in just a few turns. Phase 2 is nearly as simple with Arven's Oinkologne next to me to help split some damage. We forego the Spiky Shield strategy this time as it's hard to know if the Titan will be targeting me, so I start by knocking off their leftovers to remove their passive recovery. After a series of bullet seeds, headbutts, a lucky flinch, and the move Belch, which I never have seen successfully used in a battle before since a berry needs to be eaten beforehand. But it frustratingly doesn't get the KO because I think that would be one of the craziest techs I've ever seen from a partner AI in a Pokemon game. But I think we all know that the most difficult part of this fight was always going to be Tatsugiri. Of course they have enormous stat buffs, the held wide lens to boost their special attacks, but they also have Stab Dragon Pulse, Water Spout, one of the strongest water moves in the game, Kyogre's signature move Origin Pulse, and the move Frost Breath, which always results in a critical hit. Quite terrifying because you never know what this AI is going to do. So we start off by risking it and using Knockoff in order to reduce their damage output while we watch Arven's pig almost get one-shot. I think they see the kill on the pig, so I decide to risk it for no reason at all and use Bullet Seed for a disappointing amount of damage. I then switch Cyclops in on a resisted Water Spout that still does almost half. We then go back and forth for a few turns trying to deal the most damage to each other as Cyclops is using the super effective Dragon Pulse and Tatsugiri is using water moves. Eventually we get to the point where we need to switch, so I switch Aunt May into an Origin Pulse that deals huge damage. Tatsugiri goes for Water Spout for some reason at this point that deals less damage the less HP you have, and as we get off a Draining Kiss to deal some decent damage, we get back to over half health. And with Arven's team clutching up yet again, his Arboliva is able to snap out of confusion and take the KO with one final Petal Dance. Incredible work by Arven in these battles lately. It'd be a total shame if I had to battle him soon. Wait, really? After helping your sick dog, the first thing you want to do when he gets healthy is to put him into battle? Okay, but I'm not gonna go fight all these Titans again after he gets his cheeks clapped. It's another surprise double battle that I'm fortunately prepared for. He leads with Garganacl and Arboliva as I lead with Chestnut and Noivern. I use a similar strategy as I did against Larry, where I first Air Slash Arboliva to trigger the grassy terrain to then procs Chestnut's Grassy Seed to boost his defense. This then allows for the overkill of a body press into Arboliva before they can even move as Garganacl sets up a Sandstorm. Darkspawn comes out next, and I feel my best strategy is to Draco Pack into Garganacl, which I know the sand boosts his special defensive rock types, but that's just pitiful. And go into Sylveon, who takes an Ice Fang, and thankfully Chestnut is here because he can take the KO on the Rock Titan with another body press. Arven's signature pig comes out, and after taking a little more damage from Darkspawn, Aunt May shows off her newest move in the game, Springtide Storm, which is a spread damaging move with a 30% chance to lower the target's attack stat. So cool. This chip damage is enough for Chestnut to KO Arven's Oinky, and it's time to slow things down a little bit. I use Spiky Shield with Chestnut, hoping to bait a physical move and Strength Sap on Darkspawn to reduce their attack and gain some HP. I then use Arven's Sandstorm against him to do an oddly low amount of damage with a Rock-type Weather Ball and Scovillain, but this makes way more sense as a knockoff from Chestnut reveals that Scovillain was holding an Assault Vest. I'm now hoping that using Spiky Shield and Aunt May's Springtide Storm will allow Chestnut to survive as we get the double knockout, but of course it's just wishful thinking and I just keep getting disappointed by our damage output this run. So I switch into Noivern, who luckily takes a Fire Fang instead of an Ice Fang, and this time Sylveon can finally get the double KO. This leaves a 2-on-1 matchup against Arven's Mabostiff, and even though they have the ability Intimidate and Terrasilize into the Dark type, there's nothing they can do as Noivern U-turns into Greninja, which allows for the double up of a Water Shuriken and Springtide Storm to get the KO and to finally complete the Path of Legends side quest. After the fight, we make our way over to the academy and notice Professor Clavell standing in the doorway and proceeds to tell us that he's the leader of Team Star and he was in disguise all along. Shocked would be an understatement. And it's against my better judgment, but I'm of the opinion that the professor of an academy should not be going undercover to battle students. Whatever though. But he's going to have to wait until I catch a Hawlucha that I named Captain America. Yes, I did catch him earlier and you'll probably notice him on the team preview sheet, but he's not really relevant for a little while. Anyways, this is yet another double battle and he leads with Poltegeist and Palafin as I lead with Chestnut and Noivern. A Dragon Pulse into Palafin neutralizes their turn as they have an eject button that procs and brings in Flamigo, and Chestnut has to take a fairly strong Shadow Ball before being able to knock off their red card. Again, what are with these strategies? I'm concerned about Chestnut's well-being as they're quad weak to flying, so I use Spiky Shield as Noivern uses Air Flash on the Flamingo and manages to get the flinch, but also needs to take a Shadow Ball. I guess that Spiky Shield was kind of useless. Another Air Slash gets the KO on the Affleck Duck, and Noivern tanks yet another Shadow Ball before Chestnut can finally knock out the Teacup with another knockoff. The newly transformed Palafin and Doxmon come out next. Funny how both Clive and Palafin were wearing disguises in this fight. Now I'm concerned about Noivern's well-being, so I use my coveted Draco Pack strategy in order to deal big damage to Palafin and switch into Avalugg, who just needs to tank an Ice Fang on the switch, and Palafin uses Zen Headbutt on Chestnut that frustratingly gets the flinch. Flinch for a flinch, I suppose. But I use this to my advantage on the very next turn by using Spiky Shield as both Doxmon and Palafin target Chestnut, resulting in some chip damage while Avalugg can take out Palafin with a Stone Edge that thankfully connects. This brings out the second time we see this menacing slug, and although both of Clavell's Pokemon outspeed my team, the Dunsparce uses Boom Burst to do some huge damage to his own teammate. But since he fails to take out anyone on my team, we're able to double into him with a Body Press and a Mountain Gale to ensure that's the last time we have to hear his mating call. Clavell's Ace comes out now, and unsure what Terra type and moves are going to use, I slow things down by using Spiky Shield and Protect on both of my Pokemon. And since neither one targeted into Avalugg or revealed a fighting type move, I believe Avalugg is safe and I just need to switch Chestnut out into Delphox, who can come in relatively for free on an Ice Spinner. I do accidentally misclick and use Stone Edge here instead of Mountain Gale, and even though we do connect, the not very effective damage results in Psychic Noise barely missing out on the KO. But the strange thing is that Avalugg moves before Quack on the next turn, which makes me wonder what negative priority move they were going for. I guess we'll never find out. And since it's now a 2-on-1 against Clavell's final Pokemon and they don't have any effective moves to hit my team with, it just takes one more turn and a double up to finish off Clavell to bring us that much closer to closing out the Team Star path. But being right next to the school and Penny waiting for us in the courtyard, we immediately assemble another team to counter her evolutions and take down the Team Star leader themselves. She leads with Umbreon as I lead with my Choice Scarf Cyclops, and an Aura Sphere reveals that this is a 2-shot, and luckily she tries to just go for a foul play instead of doing some type of confusion shenanigans. So with one more Aura Sphere, we're able to take the KO on by far the bulkiest evolution. Jolteon of course comes out now as they're the strongest water type, so I switch to Go-Go on a resisted Thunderbolt. That of course gets the paralysis. But I wasn't going to be outspeeding anyways, and since we break through on the very next turn, we're able to get off a critical hit Earthquake for the 1-shot. That luck was definitely in my favor. Flareon comes out now since I'm baiting a fire type move, so I switch to Clauncher, who tanks the Fire Lash quite well but gets a defense drop. So I decide I'm going to switch to Malamar to try to get the defense boost with our contrary ability, but Flareon switches it up to go for Body Slam and paralyzes us. They then use Endeavor, which seems to be a little pointless as I get my first attack and defense boost by breaking through paralysis with a superpower. And instead of using Endeavor on this turn, which would logically be more effective now, they decide to give me one last defense boost with a Fire Lash as we can stay healthy with our Citrus Berry and take the KO with another superpower. Leafeon comes out and is threatening a quad effective X-Scissor, and even though we do have some defense boosts, I'm not confident we're going to survive, so I switch into Talonflame, who quad resists it. And then we unleash a 1-turn Sky Attack with the help of our Power Herb and get the wow. Either Talonflame is a bit weaker than I thought, or Leafeon is much bulkier than I realized, or maybe it's a mixture of both. Either way, we can take the Double Edge and then retaliate with the now double power Acrobatics to get the KO. Vaporeon comes out, and not wanting to lose another valuable fire type, I U-turn into Goodra, who of course comes in on a Muddy Water that gets the accuracy drop. The good thing is that the accuracy drop doesn't actually matter, as we can land the next 3 body presses in a row as Vaporeon triggers our Citrus Berry with their second Shadow Ball. I am planning on using Goodra against Penny's final Pokemon, so I switch Greninja into a resisted Shadow Ball, and again, I'm disappointed in Greninja's severe lack of offensive prowess. I switched you in, hoping you either one-shot a Vaporeon from here, but it takes you not one, not two, but three full attacks to finally take this thing down. But thankfully, we did KO with a U-turn, which means Goodra can come in for free against Penny's final Pokemon, which is the partner Eevee. Yes, don't be fooled because this thing is a legitimate threat to be reckoned with. Even though their first turn is somewhat wasted, since Goodra isn't a physical attacker, I also waste my turn by using the not very effective Body Press, as I had no idea they would Terrasilize into the Fairy type. And on the next turn, Alluring Voice clearly isn't enough to be threatened by, and Goodra not only gets the crit with Flash Cannon this turn, but they're able to attack first the next turn, revealing a speed tie and take out Penny and her team of evolutions once and for all. We're feeling quite good at this point, and the only thing left to do is head on over to the Elite Four to finish the main story before attempting to take on the much more threatening Blueberry Academy. As is tradition in my Nuzlocke, at this point I decide I'm going to bring the 6 most iconic Kalos Pokemon to the Elite Four to show off Generation 6 at their finest. I now have Battlebond Ash Greninja, who has upgraded their ability, as I'm tired of being disappointed by the anime's coolest Pokemon. The other 2 starters, of course, Sylveon representing the introduction of the Fairy type, Goodra being the pseudo-legendary but of course the Hisuian variant, and last but not least Vivillon, because I'm out to prove that bugs can be a menace too. And they also have a valuable immunity and quad resistance. So we take our tests a few times before we're able to pass and prepare ourselves for the first battle of the Paldean Gauntlet. Rika is up first, and since she specializes in ground types, I lead with Greninja against her Hippowdon. I have a feeling they'll try to set up entry hazards or a sandstorm, so I try to taunt to prevent that, but immediately get punished with an earthquake. Realizing it's a bad idea, I U-turn into Goodra for free on an air balloon. It seems as though Rika doesn't have any moves to hit me with, since she hard switches into Clodsire, who has to take an Ice Beam upon entry. She then Terrasilizes into the ground type, takes yet another Ice Beam, and then pops my air balloon with the Body Press, but it's just too late to do much else, because with one more Ice Beam taking the KO, that is her most menacing Pokemon neutralized. With my air balloon pop, this baits out Gastrodon, who is probably wanting to use a ground type move, so I switch into Vivillon, who can come in for free. Then I use Sleep Powder to put them to sleep, test my luck by setting up a Quiver Dance to raise my special attack, special defense, and speed by 1 stage, and luckily Gastrodon stays asleep again. A Hurricane managed to get the confusion as they surprisingly stay asleep for yet another turn, which means that Vivillon can take their first KO of the Elite Four with one more Hurricane. Another Garchomp comes out, and my best strategy is to put this thing to sleep first since I have the speed advantage before U-turning into Chestnut, and of course Garchomp wakes up on the first possible turn and lands a huge outrage on the switch-in. I use the obligatory Spiky Shield to deal some chip damage and then switch into Sylveon for free on another outrage to handle this one just like I handled Nemona's. It is a bit riskier since this Garchomp is holding the Soft Sand and is doing noticeably more damage because of it, but without any critical hits we can complete the strategy and take the KO with one last Draining Kiss that almost brings us back to full health. Palossand comes out and I'm not really sure he wants the smoke, so I stay in and use a Springtide Storm that fortunately gets the attack drop, which means Earthquake does a pathetic amount of damage. Thinking I've got this in the bag, I take the time to heal back to full, but Palossand reveals they have Sludge Bomb and they get the crit. If you were packing that, why didn't you just start with it? So now my plan is foiled and I carry on to take the KO with another Springtide Storm. Toadscruel comes out now, and unsure what move they want to use, I slow it down and get back to full health with another Strength Sap as they just charge up a Solar Beam. Since Rika wants to telegraph her turn, I switched into Delphox to take the Beam of Solar relatively well. And although I know they have a super effective move in Earth Power, I stay in to use Mystical Fire knowing that their special attack will drop, which will allow me to take much less damage. And after taking the KO on Rika's penultimate Pokemon with one last Mystical Fire, the very large Hippo rears their head again, which can only mean that I need to switch into Vivillon for free on a whiffed Earthquake. And then put that thing to sleep, U-turn into Chestnut for free as they luckily stay asleep again and take the KO with a combination of Horn Leech and Knockoff. Well done, my Kaloshian team. That's one member of the Elite Four down and only 3 to go. Poppy the Toddler is up next, and I made a promise to my team before entering the league, and we agreed that no matter the trainer, young, old, successful career woman, another unhappy, overworked man, we would bring the smoke every single time. So she starts with Fortress and I lead with my fire type Delphox. I'm quite fortunate they don't have the sturdy ability and I essentially take a free KO with a Mystical Fire to begin the fight. Goodra comes out next, and not knowing what to expect, I use Mystical Fire to deal a little bit of damage, but more importantly lower their special attack, but to my surprise they also know Outrage. Does every dragon type in this game know Outrage? So I handle this like I do the other times and switch to Aunt May for free. With the lowered special attack, I feel confident in taking a Flash Cannon, so I stay in and get off a Springtide Storm before Goodra unleashes the 140 base power Steel Beam? Does every Steel type have that attack too? Well, the good thing is with a lowered special attack stat, we're not in any real danger, and they end up KOing themselves. Tinkaton comes out and I'm sure wants to destroy my fairy with their hammer, so I switch to Goodra to tank it reasonably well. And on the the next turn she uses Play Rough that flinches. I wasn't expecting that, but thankfully the next Play Rough doesn't flinch and we can at least get off some damage with the flamethrower. We're a bit low on health, so I decided to let Delphox take a Play Rough instead, and we have just the range to take them out with another Mystical Fire and steal their Razor Fang, so that's how they flinched me. Magnezone comes out now, and knowing they're a special attacker, I use Mystical Fire to reduce their special attack, and they also have Steel Beam that does incredible damage to KO themselves. If I had a nickel for every time a Pokemon KO themselves with Steel Beam this fight, I'd have 2 nickels. It isn't much, but it's still weird. So now Corviknight comes out, and I clearly need to switch, so I bring in Greninja on an Iron Head, and he finally impresses me by getting the flinch on the very first opportunity with a Dark Pulse. We're not so lucky on the next turn and have to take a Drill Peck, but with the third Dark Pulse, we're able to get the KO and trigger our Battle Bond ability where we get a boost to our attack, special attack, and speed. I was hoping this would allow me to stay in to take on Poppy's Ace, but I am admittedly quite scared of Copperajah, especially as they terrestrialize, so I decided to waste all of my boost by flip turning into Chestnut on a superpower. Good thing too, because Greninja would have been a goner. I'm trying to play carefully here, so of course it's an obligatory Spiky Shield to do some chip damage, and then Chestnut can rip a Body Press to take the KO on the final Pokemon of the fight. For a toddler, she battled quite well, but sacrificing multiple Pokemon in a fight isn't necessarily the most effective strategy to be using. But we don't have too much time to rub it in her face because Larry and his flying types are up next. Unsure what to expect, I send in Goodra first as Larry reveals his lead Pokemon is Hisuian Braviary. We start off with a Thunderbolt as they just use Defog. What's up with trainers throwing the battle with this move? After wasting a turn and 10 seconds of my life, Goodra is able to take the KO with the second Thunderbolt. Staraptor comes out next, and to my surprise, they just use Tailwind to boost their speed even further, even though they're already faster, which means we can get off a Thunderbolt for free this turn. And then Staraptor gets to go for a nasty close combat, but we came prepared with a Chople Berry to reduce the incoming damage, which allows us to take our second KO to fight with another Thunderbolt. Flamigo comes in next, and I know it's threatening a super effective fighting mood, so I send in Vivian who quad resists it. I would go for a Sleep Powder this turn, but because Tailwind is still active, I need to first switch into Goodra on a Brave Bird as the Tailwind ends, and then switch back to Vivian to take on one more quad resisted close combat. And with the defense drops and Tailwind gone, we're free to outspeed and take the KO with a super effective Hurricane for Vivian's second KO of the Elite Four. My joy is cut short as soon as Kilowattrel comes out because we obviously need to switch to save my precious Butterfly. But Larry is one step ahead of me as I switch into Chestnut because he Volt Switches into my switch, which allows him to have the upper hand and bring out Charizard. Nice play, not gonna lie. I use Spiky Shield to scout out what Charizard is going to use, and I decide my best play is to switch into Greninja, but now Charizard sets up the Sun to take advantage of their Life Orb and Solar Power ability. This means that their attack is effectively doubled at the expense of some HP every turn, so all I need to do is outlast him and hope he can KO himself. For some reason, I think the play is to use the 15 base power Water Shuriken in the Sun. Not sure what I'm thinking, and Air Slash nearly gets the one shot, but I do see my way out after realizing how much recoil damage Charizard is taking with every attack. So I decide the best play is to switch into Delphox on a resisted Weather Ball, and Charizard thankfully KOs themselves. I'm not quite sure what to do as Kilowattrel comes out, but I decide that with the Citrus Berry recovery and the soon boosting our Mystical Fire, it's worth staying in. And Kilowattrel just throws anyway and uses Tailwind while we can get the one shot with another Mystical Fire. But now Larry's upgraded Ace, Dragonite, is out next. They're definitely faster than us with the Tailwind being active, and I know Delphox won't be able to survive a single hit, so I make the switch to Chestnut who can tank it relatively well. From here, we use the obligatory Spiky Shield to get some chip damage and stall out another turn of Tailwind, and then on the next turn we roll the dice to see if we can survive an Ice Spinner, and we survive on just 22 HP as we retaliate by knocking off their Focus Band. Quite worth it in my opinion. But now I know I'm dead to any priority move, so I send in Aunt May the Dragon Slayer who can use their typical strategy to Strength Sap and Spring Tide Storm their way to victory. It does take a couple of hits and I may have risked her to a crit or two, but it is us who gets the crit to finish the fight and take down the third member of the Paldean Elite Four. With only one more member standing between us and the champion, we heal our team, strategize, and start the battle against the Dragon Master Hassel. He leads off by showing his great taste with a regular Colossian Goodra as I lead with Greninja. This bulky behemoth has one of the highest special defense stats ever, so it's quite nice that they waste the first turn by raising their physical defense. And my luck greatly turns around on the second turn because I get the freeze. And the freeze lasts long enough that I can get off 4 Ice Beams to finally get the KO to trigger my battle bond ability. So now Duraludon is out and I feel on top of the world with my special attack boost, but Greninja never fails to disappoint as we fail to get the KO or the flinch and nearly get KO'd by a Thunderbolt. So we just use our priority Water Shuriken to get the KO on the next turn to ensure there's no funny business. Tatsugiri comes out, but this one is much smaller than the Titan we faced earlier, and I know I'm pretty much dead to anything, so I U-turn into Sylveon and what I'm hoping is a dragon move, and it is. They prove to be just a bit faster than us and hit us with a Surf before we can take them out with a Springtide Storm. Dragalge comes out next and is very clearly baiting a poison move, so I switch into Guja for free on a Venoshock and then Draco drop the absolute shit out of them for the instant KO. Hassel sends out his second pseudo-legendary Dragapult, so I switch to Chestnut as they disappear on a Phantom Force, and after they land the attack, I get to attack second to use a huge knockoff to get rid of their spell tag. This cycle repeats itself one more time before I get the knockout, and it's a tad frustrating because Phantom Force is one of the few moves that's able to hit through Protect, so we have to take some unnecessary damage before finally getting the KO. This leads to Hassel sending out his third and final pseudo-legendary of the team, and simply because I can, I use yet another spiky shield to scout out what he's going for the tiniest of chip damage. Now that I know he's wanting to use the dragon move, I switch back into Aunt May completely for free and then take the KO on the very next turn with the Springtide Storm in order to complete the Elite Four completely deathless. And if you do want to see some deaths, be sure to stick around until the Blueberry Academy because it becomes a total bloodbath. But before then, we have 3 more fights standing in our way, so after hearing Hassel cry more than his toddler counterpart, it is time to head outside and face Geeta in the showdown of the century. She leads with the Galarian Slowking as I lead with Greninja again. You know the drill by now, my Dark Pulse isn't enough for the knockout, doesn't get the flinch, so Slowking gets to use Chilly Reception to set up the snow and bring out King Gambit. This of course means that King Gambit has a super effective move to hit me with, so I switch into Chestnut on a Neck Scissor. I then proceed to use Spiky Shield for the smallest bit of chip, which gives me the confidence to take the KO with a quad effective body press the very next turn. Out comes Hydreigon, and of course I'm going to scout to see what they do, and yet another dragon type Pokemon has Outrage. So of course you know Aunt May comes out to come in for free, take an Earthquake just like every other time, and retaliate with a quad effective Draining Kiss that allows us to get back to full health. But now Gyarados comes out next, and my plan is to neutralize their attack a bit with Strength Stat before using a Draining Kiss. That does way less damage than I hoped it would. Realizing I need to switch strategies, I get Goodra out there to take them on instead. I tank an Earthquake fairly well due to a held Sugar Berry, which allows me to finish them off with another Thunder. What? A quad effective move did that little? I believe I'm dead to another Earthquake without my berry, so I switch to Chestnut on what I think is a genius plan and use Spiky Shield to get the KO with the chip damage. But of course this falls just short, but Gyarados does reveal he's using a Dragon Tail, which means another free switch back to Aunt May, who can come in a long drawn out circle and then come back to get the KO with a Draining Kiss. Totally planned it like that. This brings out Go-Go, so I stay in and use Springtide Storm as Go-Go just sets up the grassy terrain, which allows them to go for a priority Glassy Glide the next turn that does way more damage than I expected. And even though we do get the attack drop with our next move, it's unsafe to stay in, so I get Chestnut out there to finish the job. And Go-Go tries to counter this by using Surf? I don't know, but a combination of Knockoff and Horn Leech allow us to take the KO and get a bit of HP back before Geeta sends out her ace. I decide to test my luck and see what Glamora wants to do after they terrestrialize, and it turns out a Dazzling Gleam does huge damage as I land a Horn Leech that doesn't recover as much HP as I was hoping. So to finish the fight, I get Delphox out there on a resisted Dazzling Gleam, who is then able to outspeed and take the final KO of the fight with the Psychic Noise. A part of me wishes that was the end of Victory Road, but we all know the last battle has to be against Nemona since she keeps butting into my journey and challenging me to fight. So to make things just a tad spicier, I decide I'm going to go straight into the fight and bring the exact same team. Not like I really have many other options, honestly. But either way, she leads with Palma as I lead with Chestnut. My obligatory Spiky Shield pays off quite well because not only do we protect ourselves from Supercell Slam, but just look at the recoil damage caused by missing. They can still land a fairly hard close combat before going down to a body press, but I'm proud of that one. Corviknight is out next, and for some reason I decide to not use Spiky Shield before switching into Goodra on a Brave Bird. But then I use Thunderbolt that does some good damage as she just uses Tailwind. I've learned that by playing this game, sometimes the AI will switch into immunities to make my life miserable, so I use Body Press instead, thinking we might get the KO, but to more importantly punish the switch in. And we fortunately are able to do so and land some huge damage on her Ursaluna. It's definitely not safe to stay in at this point, so I switch into Vivian, who's immune, and she does her classic strategy of setting up Sleep Powder. But I didn't realize that Ursaluna would outspeed under Tailwind, so we need to take a Gunk Shot first. But this does work out to my advantage because I'm able to land a Sleep Powder as the Tailwind ends. This means that I can pivot into Chestnut as Ursaluna takes our first guaranteed turn of sleep, and then then outspeed and KO that monster with the body press before they have the chance of waking up. Corviknight comes back out, and I guess I still haven't come to my senses, so I forego the spiky shield again for Grusha to take a Brave Bird. But we're luckily able to get the KO with another Thunderbolt before another Tailwind gets set up. Hisuian Braviary comes out now, so I start by landing a Thunderbolt as they use a not very effective Esper Wing to get a speed boost. This gives me an idea and allows me to switch into Greninja for free on an Esper Wing, and even though they do get the speed boost, we can still outspeed and land a super effective Dark Pulse to get the KO and our Battle Bond boost. Now we're set up for Nemona's last Pokemon, but I'm unsure what Terra type they're going to Terastallize into, and I don't want to guess wrong leading to an untimely KO. So I decide that the best plan of action is to flip turn into Delphox, who takes a Terra boosted Flower Trick that still does over half. But good thing I gave Delphox the Choice Scarf because we're able to outspeed and take out Nemona's final Pokemon with one more Mystical Fire. At this point, we've done it. We've made it to the end game in attempt 3, and I'm confident we can take this run the distance. And the only thing standing in our way of making it to the Blueberry Academy is some extremely handsome man in a lab coat who has a full team of Paradox Pokemon holding the Booster Energy item to increase their attack stats. Oh yeah, and he has the legendary Iron Leaves on his team. So with our work cut out for us and Paradox Pokemon attacking every chance they get, it's time to end this thing before it begins. He leads with Iron Valiant and I lead with Talonflame. The fact that every single one of his Pokemon will receive some type of damage boost is quite scary, but thankfully Talonflame is fast enough and strong enough to get the one shot with the one turn Sky Attack thanks to our Power Herb. This brings out Iron Thorns, who I'm sure is going to go for a Rock type move, so I switch to Chestnut, who resists it, but you'd never be able to tell by the amount of damage it does. But thankfully we can outspeed this behemoth to take it out with a quad effective Earthquake. Of course this brings out Iron Moth next, since they see a KO with just about any one of their moves, so I switch into Goodra, who thankfully comes in on a resisted Air Slash. And with our Held Assault Vest, we can survive the Fiery Dance quite well and take another KO with a quad effective Earthquake. This brings out Iron Hands, and I think he's going to be using a fighting move, so I send in Aunt May, who takes a Fake Out for huge damage. I did give her a Babiri Berry to reduce the amount of damage taken by a Steel type move, but it seems as though Iron Hands can see it and opts to go for a Thunder Punch instead. This is totally fine since Aunt May apparently has a secret covert cloak on to keep them from getting paralyzed, and with just a couple of Draining Kisses, we're able to take the KO with a critical hit Draining Kiss and get all the way back to full health. But this is where things get a little dicey. Iron Jugulus comes out and of course gets a special attack boost, but I'm hoping they're going to use Flash Cannon to burn my berry and I can stay somewhat healthy with the Draining Kiss. But to my demise, they use Air Slash and get the flinch. Twice. So after having such good luck, I guess this balances it out, and the only play I can think of is switching to Goodra, who comes in on a resisted Air Slash. We do have Battle Armor and a Held Assault Vest, so I feel confident staying in for one turn to get off some much needed damage, and thank goodness they don't get the third flinch in a row and we can use a Thunderbolt. Now I switch into Greninja on a resisted Dark Pulse, and he actually impresses me this time by outspeeding this Paradox machine and uses a super effective Ice Beam to not only get the KO but also trigger our Battle Bond boost. This gives me a ton of confidence as Iron Leaves makes their way out to the field, because not only are we guaranteed to be faster now, but we can also use the now quad effective U-turn to take this thing out in just one hit. That battle may not have been the way that I planned it, but I'm just happy to once again walk away from a very difficult fight completely deathless. But sadly, this is where the deaths are going to start piling up. We are going from mostly single battles to only double battles from here on out, and with full teams of 6 and the final battle having a level cap of 98, we're going to need some sacrifices to make it through. So we make one final pit stop in Area 0 to pick up a Carbink. No, I'm not going to use this Carbink, but I am going to use a special Carbink named Diancie. I know it's a mythical, but with ZA coming up and me getting antsy about Mega Evolutions, it almost seems like Diancie is the Mega Evolved Carbink based on their Pokedex entry, right? Yes, I know Diancie has a Mega as well, but I'm pretending that Diancie is a Mega Evolved Carbink since they're going to be a necessary part of our success in the Blueberry Academy. So without further ado, we enter the terrarium, and the first trainer we need to fight is Carmine. Yes, I'm including her too because she has a pretty tough team and she should be included in this gauntlet as well. She leads with Toucannon and Ninetales as I lead with Greninja and Cyclops, and yes, I did have Greninja put on his newest outfit for this part of the game. The battle starts as Toucannon charges their beak and Greninja yet again fails to get the one shot with Ice Beam. Are we surprised at this point? And then Cyclops has to take a Psyshock and a Beak Blast before being able to get the KO on Ninetales with a single Water Pulse. This brings out Sinistra, who I'm assuming is going going to try and take the KO on Cyclops, so I first start by finishing off Toucan to get our Battle Bond boost and flip turning Sinistra so Talonflame takes a quad resisted Giga Drain instead. But Rowgator comes out and I'm not messing around with this thing at all, so I immediately double target him with a Dark Pulse and a Sky Attack to get the KO while Sinistra just tries their best. Scrafty comes out and I'm sticking with my strategy to target down the most obvious threat, so I double into them with the Water Shuriken and now double powered Acrobatics before they get the chance to move. But Sinistra frustratingly comes to their senses to deal some pretty big damage onto Greninja with the Giga Drain. This now brings out Carmine's Ace, a terrifying Kommo-o. So I take the time to U-turn into Noivern on a quad resisted Giga Drain while Kommo-o uses Earthquake that only hits his own teammate. Gotta love it. And with such low HP and no real way to damage either of my Pokemon, Kommo-o goes down to another Acrobatics as Sinistra goes down to the combination of an Air Slash and one final Flare Blitz from Hawkeye. Kinda wish I used Talonflame more in this run, but I guess there are more challenges to be done in the future. So with no time to waste, we have the true Blueberry Elite Four ahead of us, and the first match starts with Crispin. So we get a couple Pokemon from our box, formulate a plan for his new and improved team, make him a sandwich, and challenge Crispin for our first double battle Elite Four challenge. He leads with Scovillain and a Rotom Freeze for some reason, as I lead with Diancie and Noivern. Noivern obviously can't stay in against an Ice type, so we first start by Draco dropping the Freezer to send out our Ninja, and Diancie shows she came to play by getting the double knockout with Diamond Storm and the defense boost. This brings out Magmortar and Alolan Exeggutor. Not sure I'm seeing the vision here, but I don't want to risk Greninja to a straight grass move, so I flip turn into Magmortar for some chip damage to bring in Talonflame on a Woodhammer. Magmortar attempts to set up for a Solar Beam, but is rudely interrupted by Diancie launching a second Diamond Storm for another KO and yet another defense boost. This thing is cracked. Out comes a Talonflame of his own, but it is mine who attacks first, and we get a one-shot on Exeggutor with another Power Herb Sky Attack as we take a Flare Blitz. Not sure what the AI is doing here, but Diancie sets us up perfectly by KOing Talonflame with yet another Diamond Storm, as this leaves Crispin's Ace in a 2-on-1 situation. Of course, they try to Terrasilize into the Fire type to do some big damage, but it's not enough because although an Acrobatics doesn't quite get the KO, a close combat uselessly goes into Diancie, as you can see the result of all the defense boost, and she can retaliate with a Diamond Storm of her own for her 5th KO of the fight. What a debut by Diancie. Of course I expected big things, but not this level of dominance. But sadly, she cannot come with us to the next Blueberry member because she's quad weak to Steel. So after assembling a separate team and getting Hawlucha out of the box for their first real appearance, it's time to battle Amaris. She leads with Skarmory and Reuniclus, as I lead with the starter duo of Delphox and Greninja. This fight can be quite tricky with her wanting to set up Trick Room to allow her slower Steel types to move first, so I need to go about this delicately to not lose a teammate. I first start by taunting Skarmory to deny Stealth Rock, and it may look odd to have Delphox use Trick Room since I just said I wanted to prevent it, but Reuniclus using Trick Room immediately after me returns the dimensions to normal, so I don't even have to worry about it. And then I can deny Trick Room almost permanently by taunting Reuniclus the next turn and using Dazzling Gleam to break Skarmory's sturdy and get some much needed chip damage on Reuniclus. We do need to take a Drill Peck in the process, but all the chip damage from earlier allows us to take the KO on Reuniclus with the Dark Pulse that triggers our Battle Bond ability, and Delphox can take the KO on Skarmory with the Mystical Fire. Out come Amaris' next two Pokemon, Empoleon and Porygon Z. Delphox is of course dead to just about any water type move in this situation, so I switch in Chestnut to take the Wave Crash instead, and Greninja shows off that his shiny variant is superior by managing to get the flinch on Porygon. A Water Shuriken can finish them off on the next turn, and Chestnut knocks off Empoleon's Muscle Band, as this stupid penguin also knows that move Steel Beam that unfortunately lands a critical hit. Panic sets in a bit as Scizor comes out, and I tragically waste Chestnut's turn by using Spiky Shield instead of going for some damage because Amaris decides to double target the Greninja slot instead. I did think that would happen, which is why I U-turned into Cyclops, a more expendable team member, but I didn't think we would start the next turn with this little health. I'm hoping a Choice Scarf or a Sphere is enough to get the KO onto Scizor, but of course it isn't, and Scizor can take the KO with a Trailblaze for my first death of the Blueberry Elite Four. And don't worry, it won't be the last. But Chestnut is able to frustratingly KO Scizor with a Body Press, meaning the Trailblaze speed boost did indeed matter, and an Ice Beam does some pretty big damage before our Berry. This at least gives us the free switch into Hawlucha as Amaris sends out her Ace Metagross, and to her demise she Terrasilises into the Steel type, losing their Psychic typing, which means Hawlucha can get their first KO of the run with a now super effective close combat, as Chestnut just protects themselves from another Ice Beam. And with the Emperor Penguin staring down two Pokemon with less than half health, all they can do is sit back and watch as Captain America uses close combat to take the final KO of the match and avenge their fallen brethren. Cyclops has been a huge part of this run, and this one does hurt quite a bit. Completely avoidable with better prep, but the good news is that we have plenty of other encounters to take down the last 2 remaining members of the Blueberry Elite Four. Lacey is up next, and after tickling her Pokemon's belly, she decides that she's finally up for a battle. And I'm still kicking myself for the mistakes in this battle, but she leads with Granbull and Whimsicott as I send out Goodra and Delphox. The first thing I do is set up a light screen with Delphox, who's holding the light clay, so we'll have extra protection for 3 more turns. And after taking a Moonblast, Goodra is able to get the one-hit KO into Granbull with a Flash Cannon. The best Pokemon of all time makes their appearance next, and I'm feeling quite safe behind my light screen, so I leave Delphox in to use Mystical Fire to KO Whimsicott and Thunderbolt Primarina for some disappointing damage as she retaliates with the Surf that still does over half to Delphox behind a light screen. Isn't she just the best? Galarian Slowbro comes out, and I'm not threatened by them one bit, although I definitely should be, so I focus down Primarina first. I use Mystical Fire to lower their special attack in case they survive, but to my surprise, Goodra gets the range for their second KO of the fight, and Slowbro just sets up the rain, he said unknowingly. Not thinking anyone's in real trouble, I keep Delphox in to use Reflect for the end of the fight as I knock off Slowbro's Damp Rock, but Lacey pulls the technique of the century. She uses Alchemy to decorate Slowbro, doubling their special attack, and then uses a rain-boosted Weather Ball to finish off my Fire Starter. How careless! Completely preventable if I just would have read the signals and realized what they were doing with the rain. But I can't dwell for too long or I'll potentially lose another teammate, so I send in Dragalge next to take his place. And with some furious rage in his heart, Goodra targets down Slowbro with a Flash Cannon as somehow a rain-boosted Hydro Pump doesn't even do half to Alchemy. What is this thing made of? Cake? So now Lacey sends out her final Pokemon, Excadrill, and this is where Delphox left his parting gift. Of course, they Terrasilize into the Fairy type, and even though I gave both Pokemon a Shuka Berry to survive the hit better, there is no way both Pokemon would have survived the hit without Reflect. But it is quite funny that the only Pokemon that got KO'd in this turn is Lacey's Alchemy, and since Excadrill Terrasilize into the Fairy type, they have 0 chance to survive a stab super effective Flash Cannon from Goodra. Thank you for your contributions in this run, Delphox. We won't let the run end in vain. And I wish I could tell you that was the last careless death of the run, but unfortunately another grave mistake happens again as we take on the second Dragon Master Elite Four member. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Drayton leads with Flygon and Dragonite as I lead with Noivern and Dragalge. I'm pretty sure we all know what's about to happen here, but I guess I'll just have to tell you anyway. Both my Dragon types are holding a Jetpack, so of course we go for the next 2 Draco drops of the run, which allow me to KO 2 of Drayton's scariest Pokemon and get 2 free switches into Goodra and Aunt May. But as Kingdra and Sceptile make their way onto the field, my love of Draco dropping will cost me one of my dear teammates' lives. Because although Sceptile's turn goes to waste by trying to land a Focus Punch, Aunt May is able to do huge damage with Springtide Storm to interrupt Sceptile's focus and almost KO Kingdra. But tell me why I felt the need to Draco drop Kingdra when they have this little HP. This means that Goodra is effectively useless the next turn as Charizard comes out, which means I have to waste an entire turn on repositioning into Diancie. This allows Charizard to set up the Sun, Sceptile to land a nasty Leaf Storm into Aunt May, and a somewhat wimpy Springtide Storm. I'm not sure if I was still thinking about how and why I Draco dropped that Kingdra, but I didn't grasp the situation of what was going on in front of me, and I have to watch my sweet baby Aunt May go down to a sun-boosted Flamethrower. The moment immediately after that KO, I almost lose my second Fairy type on the same turn, but thank goodness the first Leaf Storm lowered Sceptile's special attack so Diancie can take the KO with another Diamond Storm. The bad news is obviously that I lost one of my strongest team members, and the good news is that I get a free switch into Noivern. I'm not taking any chances on losing Diancie since they're an important part of my Kieran plan, so I switched them out for Goodra before our Chaladon Terrasilizes into the Dragon type. This does make them take some super effective damage from Dragon moves now, and with some pretty pitiful special defense, Noivern can take the second KO of the fight with another Draco Meteor. Yes, we won the fight, but at what cost? Was it worth including the Blueberry Academy? Trading a second champion belt at the expense of 3 team members' lives? 3 fights in a row we've lost a team member, and I'm wondering if the journey is even worth continuing. I look around at my team and realize something special. We've managed to defeat 44 trainers on our journey, and not a single one of them want the run to stop. Except for this thing, I'm not sure they're cut out for battle. But as we approach the final battle of the run, I'm filled with great joy knowing that my team has done their absolute best to execute every plan I've created. Yes, there have been some misplays that led to deaths along the way, and I wish we could bring back every one of those Pokemon to the final battle. But my 2 remaining starters grab my hand and remind me that these teammates aren't gone. No, their spirits live within us. Aunt May, Iron Man, Cyclops, not really Sabretooth, they weren't on the team that long, but the spirit of those three are what's fueling my Pokemon to complete this journey and crush the hopes and dreams of Kieran. Let's do it, boys and girls. Let's give him the smoke. So Kieran leads with Yanmega and Kleavor as I lead with Greninja and Diancie. My plan for the beginning couldn't have worked out any better than it did. I realized Greninja is probably baiting a kill from both of Kieran's Pokemon, so I used Protect, and sure enough, we get the call right, and Diancie uses Diamond Storm to get the KO on Yanmega and do huge damage to Kleavor. That was for you, Aunt May. Incineroar comes out, and on the next turn, Greninja uses Water Shuriken to ensure Kleavor goes down to give him a Battle Bond boost. He does need to take a Brick Break in the process, but Diancie lets him know that she's got us back by KOing the Fire Cat with another Diamond Storm. Alolan Muck and Politoed make their way out now, and again my spidey senses are tingling, telling me that they're wanting to double target Greninja, so we use Protect again as we bait both attacks. This allows Diancie to do some huge damage in return with another Diamond Storm. Not wanting to pointlessly waste another Pokemon's life, I U-turn into Vivian, who gets to come in for free on an Earth Power as Diancie takes her third KO of the fight with just as many Diamond Storms. I was hoping for the double knockout to have another 2-on-1 situation, but that Toad proves to be just too bulky. Kieran sends out his last Pokemon now, and I do debate switching out Vivian to keep her safe, but she looks back at me as Hydrapple terastallizes and lets me know that it's going to be okay. She started this journey with me, so she wants to end it with me as well. She stays in and uses Sleep Powder to neutralize the newest threat while she allows Diancie to use Dazzling Gleam to pick up her fourth KO and do some respectable damage to Hydrapple. And with Kieran's last Pokemon still asleep, there's nothing he can do as Vivian and Diancie double up with the Hurricane and Dazzling Gleam to not only get the KO, but to also complete the run. This challenge was so much fun, and even though the Kalos Pokemon are a bit lacking in the Scarlet and Violet decks, that was the first time I got to use all three Kalos starters in a single run. If you liked this run, don't forget to leave a like, maybe subscribe if you like this kind of content, and leave me a comment on what type of run I should do next. Until then, I'm experimenting with some new theory videos, so if you want to check those out, I recommend these two here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for another challenge run.